Okay, so I guess we are going live now. So, hello everyone, good evening, and a warm welcome to you all who are currently with us at the Aesha Kolkata Popularly Yours, Aesha Kolkata initiative. Today we have with us Miss Madhura Banerjee, who is a soulful poet and established coder, being a computer science student from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, a mentor, a TEDx speaker, an emerging technology specialist at PwC, and a published author at this very young age. Her book of poetry, Tenet of the World, got published in March 2017. On the same year, she had also delivered a poetry reading on All India Radio. Now, she has also been invited to a number of institutes as a speaker and a workshop instructor in poetry, and obviously as an esteemed judge in various poetry and writing competitions. We have had her host poetry slams and workshops numerous times at Aesha Kolkata. Other than that, she has also been a member of Srijan, an exclusive poetry club based in Kolkata. She has been awarded the Best Slammer at Paper Cup Poetry Slam 0.7 in 2016 and voted Best Poetry Performer at Airplane Poetry Movement and Paper Cup Present Poetry Slam 0.8. She is an ex-contributing columnist at the Telegraph and a creative writing mentor at MyCaptain. As for her love of writing, which she discovered at the young age of 7, she, in her own words, wants her writing to be somewhat like an express train, with each floating scene by your window as a new metaphor or a new poem in itself. The Hugh woman, as she calls herself on social media platforms, urges us, "Meethi boliya sun le, bezuban lamho." Okay, so over to you, Madhura Di.
Hi, thanks a lot for inviting me to be a part of this. And that was a very glowing introduction. And I don't know who dug up my entire CV because when you asked me for a bio, I sent a couple of lines. But anyway, I'm really, really grateful that you thought that all these things were, good enough to be expressed on this platform tonight. And I want to, thank your entire team for arranging this. This sounds like a very innovative initiative, and to be in, I have been going to Aesha for a long time. Since 2017, I've hosted workshops, and I've been there around 3 times, if I'm not wrong, if not more. Not that I don't remember it, but it's just that there have been a lot of memories, and I met a lot of wonderful people through them. And to be still be a part of this, even though we all cannot meet, means a lot to me. So thanks.
So I guess we can get started now.
So how is it going to be? You're going to ask me something, and I'm going to answer, or I'm just going to talk. Sorry for asking this.
That's completely fine. So in these series of Popularly Yours talks, we usually have our guests speak on whatever the topic for the night is. And I guess tonight's topic is how the different art forms gradually converge into one another, and how it's very difficult to tell one from the other.
Yeah. Right. Okay, great. So a little background on how this topic came to be. At first, it was so one of your team members, Diptatanu, was talking to me about coming on this event, and we were actually brainstorming about what I can talk about, because the focus, as much as my science background, which I like relating to whenever I address Aesha students, while science is of course a part of our lives, much of the focus was also on the fact that I write poetry, the fact that I write in the first place. So all kinds of ideas about how writing fuses into science, or how writing made me better at science, and which are all big chapters of my life, and I can talk about them if such a conversation comes up. So we were talking about those things, and I thought of maybe talking about how writing made me better at science, which happens. So we pretty much focused on that topic tentatively until one of your very esteemed students here, who happens to be my first friend from your institute, Debmalya, and you knew who I was going to talk about anyway. So he came up with the topic of how different kinds of art fuse into one another, and how you cannot separate them, and which is so like him to suggest it, because it while it personifies him, him expressing them has also made other people relate to it. So it personifies a lot of different people, as I have come to realize, as I've come to know that while we talk about art, it's not just about poetry and painting and dance. Of course, they are the more obvious siblings of this thing called art, right? But something we very often I won't say ignore, but very often overlook is the fact that this one neglected cousin of art called science, and how basically creativity is an instinct, and our inspiration, the jolts of the jolts basically, which urge us to create something, can come from anything. So suppose we are watching a sunset. One person might interpret it as a painting. One person can interpret it as music. Like I remember doing that. The theme of sunset just struck me because I remembered something from last year when I was on a plane, and I was watching the sky, sunset time, which is the day was winding down, and there were these ribbons of gold fusing with the blue canvas of the sky, and it immediately made me think of ballet. The art of pirouetting. When the ballet dancer goes like this, it's pirouetting, and it seemed like the golden ribbons were being commanded by some force, and they were just whirlpooling around the blue like this, and it made me think of ballet. And similarly, someone, if they look at the sunset sky, they might think of Rayleigh scattering, diffraction, and so everything that is my perspective, that everything comes from a singular source. And if we think of it in terms of physics, it is like creativity, or the urge to create is like a prism, and there is just one beam that is coming and hitting that prism, and what comes out of it are the various forms of creation, that is painting, poetry, art, dance, science. And I don't want to dissociate science from this conversation, because I also because I feel like it is a part of that that beam that separates into the 7 colors. Science is a part of one of those colors. So that is why I really love this topic, and I can go on and on about it. If I am to say what I have, the talking points I have planned for the coming evening, it can be this whole overview of what I just said, right? How broadly what I feel about creativity and how it encompasses everything, and essentially how one art form cannot be separated from one another. Even if you're taking a microscope of creativity and looking at it through it, you cannot separate them, because sometimes you do find yourself saying these things, right? You look at a dance performance on stage and you say, okay, she moves like poetry. Or you read a poem and you exclaim, okay, this is so cinematic. So at no point can you say that they are separate. except in the medium in which they are expressed in. And that is the same as saying that we live in separate houses. If you can make a separation between people based on their home addresses or where they live, making this distinction on creative medium is doing just that. While the similarity of the fact that we all feel, we all sing, we all listen to music, we all fall in love, we all get our heart broken, we all break friendships, we all travel. That is the whole notion of claiming that art cannot be separated. So yeah, that is how I wanted to get started, basically.
So now I guess we can go ahead into the various facets of how you think, how your inspirations come to you, and how it's like necessarily not very poetic each time, but it ends up into poetry and like that.
Absolutely, and I really love how you put that. Sorry, I'm doing this. I just had a haircut. I'm not vain, okay? I'm not looking at myself and adjusting myself in the front of the camera all the time. Yeah, I'm just really
so
a bit
sweet,
of.
And you look really sweet tonight.
Thank you. So do you. You look like you're about to go out, but
No, I'm just kind of decked up because I'm meeting with you after so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really nice seeing you again. I mean, it's been so yes. Like I said, I really loved how you put it. So when the inspiration strikes, or when it's there, before it becomes a poem, before it becomes a few lines of prose, it's not really pretty all the time. I mean, I do get my inspiration from pretty things. We all do. Sunsets and mountains during daybreak, and your mom is standing there with a sari, and you think, okay, this graceful lady, how did I deserve to be her child, and all those things. I'm just saying all this because I think she's watching. But yeah, so that while that is also there, and incidentally, the first poem that I wrote, like you mentioned, when I was 7 years old, I wrote it when I watched flowers from my grandfather's house. And so, one second. Yeah, so I looked at the flowers, and it was just a very childlike attempt at rhyming, because that is what I knew poetry to be back then. Rhyming lines, first and third lines rhymed, second and fourth lines rhymed, or first, second, third, fourth lines rhyming. I didn't know so much about form and everything, but maybe because it was all a journey. So yeah, but as I grew, while some things were really beautiful to see, I realized that as we grow, we start looking within, we start looking beyond. So recently, when I published the book, so I have 2 books of poetry, right? The first book was more about the, if I have to say that it was more about the top layer beauty. I mean, looking at traveling by the highway, looking at a beautiful apple orchard in Kashmir and thinking, okay, I need to write about that, things like that. So it was all very, outside urge oriented. But as I grew older, that book was a learning step for me. I realized what more I can do. And I don't want to say that my second book is a perfect work of art, but it is a reflection of how much I have learned. So I have learned to look beyond. So when I wrote the second book, I wanted to capture the beauty of the place I'm in, definitely, but tell its stories from a deeper perspective. So I started noticing people and trying to, even if I never got to know their entire story, like when I'm traveling, Mussoorie, I met a woman selling carpets by the side of the road, and she looked. Why would you sell carpets by the side of the road and not have a roof over your head to sell them from? You can even imagine the amount of adversity she must have. So a lot can be relied on imagination, but still I wanted to attempt to tell the stories of people. And that is how while both books were travel themed, the second book was a little more sensitive towards the idea of travel and how it encompasses people and their stories, and not just about seeing something nice. So it was about history and learning the culture of the place, and not just writing about a mosque because its silhouette looks pretty against the sunset. While I cannot write enough about them, but anyway, I wrote about myself, my friends. While I also tried to see Kolkata from a perspective of a traveler. I was, I did grow up here. I did go to school here, college, masters, everything in Calcutta. Now I'm in Bangalore, but what if I could see Calcutta from an outsider's perspective? So things like that. Analyzing my own memories and seeing 30 Park Street as not just 30 Park Street, but this is where my friends and I first met, and this is where painful things happened as well, and so many things. So I tried to bring in the metaphor of people and memories and history, not just my own, not just the history that we read in textbooks, but even the history of our own lives, which wouldn't probably make it to textbooks, but it can make it to some kind of sheet of paper, right? And so that's how the inspiration kept maturing, and it is still maturing. I don't know what the next. I'm still writing about. I have kind of moved towards prose now. In the past year, I have extensively been writing short stories, and it's still about people and places and memories. So I'm maybe that will be a learning point for me too, to see how that matures into something different about what inspiration eventually means to me. Maybe I'll get more philosophical. I don't know.
Now that you put it, my childhood was extensively littered. I won't say littered, like it was carved out of the experiences I had when I traveled to different places. And I started traveling very early, like when I was 8 months old. And I never realized that this whole experience, like this outdoorsy activity, could be termed as art, and you could, derive all these inspirations and think about all these stories from it. So I guess now we can move on to the more intricate aspects of the topic tonight. Like how would you think that, say, if I am currently, say, I'm in an art museum and I see this painting, or I am at some theater and there is this certain emotion I feel, how do you think you can make art out of that?
Yeah. So firstly, what comes to mind is that you're at a museum, or you're watching a film. So you are not separate anymore. Like you are a part of someone else's art. You are a part of the journey of someone else's art. So mainly, I would like to pay tribute to that, right? And I don't know if we do this subconsciously, or whether it is human instinct to find something relatable in everything we see. I mean, we end up doing that, right? We end up listening to sad songs when we're sad. We end up painting when we are really happy, even though I'm very bad at sketching, painting, or anything like that. I find myself, if I'm in a mood like that, free of all worldly bindings, then I find myself drawing out of nowhere. And it's all pretty bad, so I will never show it to anybody. But just the thought that I can go back to something that I used to do. I mean, you've grown up in a Bengali household, so you know how important drawing classes were. So so going back to something that innocent, so things like that. So we all tend to and it's all about relating to the artist. When we are sad, we listen to sad songs. When they're happy, we listen to happy songs. It's all about how the artist's lyrics or the way they tuned their musical instrument, how they are in tune with what we are feeling inside, as if they were meant for us, they were written for us. So while it is our instinct to find that, discover that, we should also appreciate when it happens out of the blue. Like we walk into an art museum, we see a painting and we think that, okay, this defines me. But even if it doesn't, even if you don't have an overwhelming experience like that, you're just looking at a painting and you don't really understand it, but you're giving it the time to unfurl what it might mean. And even if you don't get it, then it must have meant something to the artist. You are actually embedding yourself in the never-ending, immortal journey that happens when any artist creates art. So that is how I usually, I love that you asked me this, because I usually end up writing something if I'm moved or not moved by a piece of art, a film, a TV show, thinking that I am somehow connected to the artist who created it. I can be if that artist is, was born 3 centuries before me, then I marvel at how their ideas of, culture, society, they echo what is happening now, or how what they were going through emotionally is something I'm going through now. So that is when I understand them, and I feel like if I could have a friend, if I could not feel lonely by the word, if I could feel a little less lonely just by the words of someone born 300 years before me, then there must be people here right now who can have the same effect on me. So it kind of reinstates your faith in the positivity of the world, and thinking that, okay, I am not alone. If I can feel the same things that Tagore's character had felt, then other people feel it too. And it's the same thing when you're watching a film or anything. And if you don't understand them, if you don't relate to them, then it is like a chance encounter, someone you just make eye contact with at on a bus, at a cafe, and then you just go your different ways. But you did kind of have a moment there. You did look at each other, or you caught yourself looking at the same direction, something. So we can't even ignore those. So, yeah.
Like the way you put it, that's something I experience most of the times. Like it's so overwhelming to hear you say that out loud, because I don't think that way. Like usually I'm just going about with life, and then I pause a maximum of 2 seconds and I'm like, oh, a nice butterfly. But that's that. Yeah. But the fact that you create poetry out of it, that is so, I don't know, that feels marvelous. And you made a point about how, you were saying something about how a movie or theater can be made out of entirely different or something entirely unique as an inspiration. So can you elaborate on that? Say, how do books get translated to movies, or I don't know, everyday experiences when pieced together form movies or form a very I won't say like relatable content, but when you watch it, you live the experience.
Yeah.
So how can you put it?
So when you're talking about, if I got that question right, you're asking me how one art form, when translated to another, like a book to a movie, how they end up as individual art forms, but at the same time connected somehow.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So there are, to be very honest, there are very few books to movie translations or book to series translations that we have seen that are exactly like what we've read in the books, right? Or maybe I don't have enough data for it, but based on my experience, there have been very few such experiences. So in that case, it is like living something wonderful twice. I mean, why would we go ahead and watch that movie or TV show if we've already read the book and not liked? It's because we love it. We want to experience it twice, and too much of a good thing can never be bad. And I felt the same when I recently watched Anne with an E on Netflix, and I went back to reading Anne of Green Gables as a child, and I also made it a. I read Anne of Green Gables when I borrowed that book from my school library. So I don't really have that book, so I bought it again for my birthday this year after watching Anne with an E. So it's kind of like a circular experience where I read the book, watched the series, then watched the series and went back to the book, and it was kind of like seesawing between the two things, because when you experience an art form that is wonderful, it never really ends. It can either go on linearly, like you're telling someone about it, you're reliving it, you feel a part of it, you carry a part of it with you, like a character's traits somehow gets ingrained in you. Or it can be a cyclic journey like this, that you are reading the book, then watching the thing, then watching the thing, then reading the book. It's this is the first time I'm doing that, because my Harry Potter experience has been reading the books, watching the movies, not seesawing like this, because there were, to be fair, too many books. You can really go from here to here too many times. But anyway, Anne of Green Gables, it gave me that experience, and that was one show that really translated the entire feel of the book into this cinematic moving picture. It's a series. So there were some plot lines which were changed, of course, and it kind of felt bad when I was watching them, that why would you tamper with the plot line? And I started thinking about what kind of the motive that filmmakers or people involved in making series for web series have viewership, and whether it would sell or not, and somehow increasing the drama factor in one from one chapter, or even if two of the characters shared a simple friendship in Netflix, they would show it as a heightened romance, a brewing teenage romance, while in the book it was in the book you can explore such nuanced things, that two friends feeling so intimate with each other that it is very close to love. But when you're translating that on screen, one thing is you don't have enough time to extend the nuance for so long. It is kind of instant, which is also the same conversation we kept having with poets, with writing for books and writing for the stage, spoken word poetry, that how for the latter you have to you cannot ignore the performance factor, that you have to make an impact right there, right now, and you don't have the luxury, your audience doesn't have the luxury to hang on to your words, close their eyes, think about how deep they were. So the luxury of time, not really there for performance art. And I do have experience performing on stage, but I don't have any experience filming things and making moving pictures or anything like that. So I won't know the kind of psychology that goes into it, but I'm guessing it is something like that they have to make a more immediate impact than books, and that is why they kind of curtail certain things, cut certain things down, cut them short. And that is how we end up with more cliches in movies than we do in books. In books, we have a wider range, a wider variety of emotions, and we have more open ends, and we have more things left to the interpretation of the reader. But in movies, in TV shows, I have seen that even if there are a lot, we cannot ignore that movies and TV shows can be extremely complex, that they are. And you have your film club, and they are these wonderful high thinking people, and I don't know what they're thinking of me when I'm saying these things, but I'm not saying that movies lack complexity or anything, but it's just that they have to achieve that sense of complexity in a limited space, limited time. So the experience becomes a little compressed and fast moving, so to say. So that I mean, I think that is why while the base, while we cannot unless something is really badly made and the director does not pay any respect to the writer whose work they took it from, unless it is a scenario like that, which is a completely different conversation. You cannot ignore that the book and the movie, the book and the TV series, or a remake of one old film and something contemporary is bound by a very unignorable, not one, many unignorable threads. But at the same time, individually, they are two very different experiences. And while you can trace one from the other, it almost becomes like identifying genes in two people who are related. Like, okay, she's my sister, so she loves the way I do, but she is her own person, and I am my own person. So that way.
So that is very articulate, if I might say, like the way you put it. Like, usually we say, the film does not match up to the book. That's what we say usually. And now that you say it, that's so sweet. Now, we have with us Shohamda and obviously Debmalya. You might remember Shohamda from our poetry slams and workshops.
Of course.
He's a regular, and he's himself a very eminent poet. So
yes,
he has
published author.
He has a question for you. Do you think translation between art forms is ever possible? And he says, let me put this in a different way. Do you think any particular art form and or particular language, you can also say, is related to what it captures?
Oh, okay. So does he mean that if I am rewriting a story that was originally written in Bengali, maybe I'm making a English film out of something that was originally written in Bengali, that it won't be a very, there would be some loss in translation?
Exactly. I
in different levels.
He says, yes.
Yeah, I mean, different levels, right? We are dealing with the art of translation between two art forms, as well as the art of translation between two languages. So definitely, when we are dealing with two such levels, I would like to talk about this because I write in English, but I try to highlight my own experiences of growing up in a Bengali household, living in Bengal, and being passionately in love with my city and North Bengal and so many other places which are rooted in the idea of Bengal and its sensitivity towards art and music and everything that you relate Bengal to. But I write in English. So how do I feel those sentiments in Bengali, but I express them in English. So how can you say that I'm being true to that sentiment? And you will say, and I constantly keep saying that my supreme most source of inspiration is Rabindranath Tagore. And if he inspires me, then how are my reactions in English and they are not in Bengali? So I have wondered about this, that if I did write in Bengali, would I be truer to what I'm trying to express? So that is how I'm trying. So I'm not saying that this is a tried and tested method and I'm absolutely right in what I'm doing, but this is just something I've tried, that I will spend my entire life trying to do, is that I will try to find that balance where I can, if I can make a train metaphor, because each and every express train, you said it at the very beginning. It's like taking the bogies of my inspirations and making them travel down the rail track of the English language to a point where the English language is not really foreign anymore. I won't say not really, it's not foreign at all. Because not just because we grew up studying it in school, or not just because we have always been exposed to English cinema and TV series to a point that we have swallowed so much that we have made those experiences our own. All these factors are there, but I think people of all cultures have made not just English, but whichever language that they want to, culturally inherit as their own, and we can do that. So when I'm writing about something that is inherently in the experience is inherently Bengali, I can still write it in English by choosing the right words. Some words cannot be translated at all, so I just write them as I speak them in Bengali, but in English text, but arranging them in a sentence such that its meaning gets conveyed. So words like Musholdhara and Borsha, and I'm saying these things because I'm recollecting my experience of writing my second book, which is rooted in the idea of monsoon, and so these things are coming to mind. And I think the same comes to translating one art form from another, because when you observe people who are writers, but you've seen them making films, like we have seen films of Gulzar, right? And it's not just because you know him to be a writer, a poet, a lyricist, but when you see it, there is just this flavor there which you cannot really dissociate from his film, from the film that he would that is his baby. It would be you cannot separate the poetry from it because the creator inevitably puts a bit of themselves into whatever they write. If I am writing about a war survivor, of someone who lost an arm in a war, I can use my imagination and write up a character like that, but you would still see bits and pieces of me in them, because it's very hard to separate in very nuanced similarities, but it's very hard to separate. So if you're taking a book and making it into a film, unless you are very 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 not at all giving respect to the original creation, then you will see signs of it that I don't know what it is, but if I look at a film and I know that this has been a book, I can somehow see the literary flavor in it, and I can imagine what the words in the page might be if I've not read the original book. It's just there. And while we're on this idea, I can think about the same sentiment when we talk about poetry and prose. And there are people who write both, right? We have celebrated writers like Sunil Gangopadhyay who have written both. And I started reading his work through his poetry. I first read his poetry and then I read his prose. And not just his stories, I read travelogues also. There's a book called Paet Tolay Shorshe, which are his travelogues. And when you read them, so that's the thing, right? Of course, if I do more research on him, I will know which came first. Did Hortat Nirajon, the collection of poems, come first, or did the books come, the novels come first? But when I read his novels, there is a poetic flavor there that you cannot ignore, because a poet has written prose. The same way, if you're talking about a singular source, like if a writer makes a film, it is you can actually see a story or a book come to life, and it's not an individual piece of creation like just a film. Not that any film is just a film, everything is a story, but still if you can actually have it unfurl in the background.
Okay. So as Shohamda says, he says not really, he disagrees. He says, okay. Can you capture or express, so to say, Santhal Parganas simultaneously? in German, English, as well as in a painting with its full spirit. If it's possible, then is it the spirit of the content completely independent of the form?
Yeah. So, according to me, I don't think that that can be entirely possible. Because if you could take something like that and just recreate it into something else, then it would be way too fluid, right? I mean, if it's something that fluid, then it loses its strength, is what I feel. I mean. When you are translating one thing from another, even if it's a book to a painting, a poem to a painting, or something from Bengali to German, you can just see the similarities. It carries a shadow. Not just shadow. A shadow is kind of an insult, but it carries a flavor. So suppose you have is like tracing back the genes of somebody, but them still being their own person. Like I am similar to my mom, but I am not my mom. I'm just a different person. So while the similarities are there, I think that is where the joy is. Just to look at a painting, think about. What is that song? That song is called Starry Starry Night by Don McLean, and you listen to it and you think, okay, yes, this has been written about Van Gogh's Starry Night, but the experience that you have when you look at that painting and the experience you have when you listen to that music can definitely never be the same, and we would never want it to be the same, because we would want both things to exist. If both of them are perfectly wonderful, we want them to exist the same way. Reading about Calcutta, written by someone, a Bengali writer, and reading about Calcutta as written by Amit Chaudhary in his book of English short stories, the experiences are completely different. Somehow they feel different. The difference is as nuanced as listening to stories, listening to a bedtime story narrated by your grandmother, as opposed to listening to an author narrating something from their book to a hushed audience. The difference is nuanced like that. That both experiences are wonderful, but you want them to be different because you want the flavor of both to exist.
Okay, so we have Debmalya also with us, and I think he wants you to talk a bit about how often do writers get inspired by other forms of art? Like you just said, that there's this song that you love listening to, which was totally inspired by Van Gogh's Starry Night, yet you get two entirely different experiences while feeling those, while looking at the painting or listening to the song. And that's what he says. Like, how often do you think writers get inspired by other forms of art, and how easy or difficult it is to convert that inspiration from a different field into one's chosen art form?
Yeah, if you've read his poetry, Debmalya's writing, you will know why he's asking, because or why he wants to talk about this, because so much of his writing sounds musical and so much of his writing is cinematic. So of course he wants to talk about this. But yes, how often do writers get inspired by other art forms? All the time, right? It is not, we don't choose what we are getting inspired by, right? We everything. I mean, yes. Lately, I was inspired. Let me tell you something. Lately, I was inspired by a Bollywood. I can't believe this feels like a confession, but I was inspired by a Bollywood dance hit remix to write a poem, because it made me think of my freshers party in college. And that actually highlights the kind of relationship I think my instinct to write shares with other art forms is that they act as a compass. They act as something that leads me somewhere. So I heard this Bollywood dance number. That's all I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you the name of it. Not that I'm ashamed. All kinds of music are wonderful, but it was a Bollywood dance number, and it just directed me to a memory from 2014, where this very, very shy person called Madhura had just graduated school, and she was okay. So we did not factual error here. We did not have a freshers party in our first year. We had a freshers party in our second year. That's a different story. So anyway, it was my first full blown event with so many people who were not really strangers but not really friends, and a bunch of them were friends, but there were a lot of strangers also, juniors, seniors, and not professors, thank God. So yeah, it just directed me to that evening, and I started thinking about how it was kind of that evening was an awakening inside me, that I was no more that girl who was lurking around in the corners afraid to come out. I was, of course, but there were some very kind souls who dragged me out of that corner, and I led them. Previously, I would never let them. I would just, fight and say, no, I'm drinking water, I'm drinking my juice. Why can't you just let me be? But here I can drink juice and do and dance with you at the same time. Just, these little awakenings which meant way more, that I was becoming a new person. I was breaking out of my shell. It just, a song, something as simple as a song, which I don't even like. It just, she took me like a time machine to an evening 6 years ago, and 5 years ago, sorry, and it just it made me write something based on the act of becoming a new person but not really realizing it. That is where the beauty of it lies, that I'm having all of these changes happen inside me, and I'm just going with them without stopping to look at them, because I know that eventually I will stop to look back and analyze things in retrospect. But by that time, I would want to have a lot of stories and a lot of experiences in my saddlebag. And so yeah, that is, I just spoke about myself for a long time, but basically, yeah, that is how something can inspire you to write, but a song can inspire you to write. Someone dancing on stage can inspire you to write poetry by the way they are moving. Or just think of dance and the dance dramas that I watched in school. People who were at the age of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, they were translating the words of Rabindranath Tagore. I'm saying Tagore because I'm thinking of a memory from Rabindra Jayanti, and you would look at them, the way they were dancing, that at places where the words were very strong, they were moving very quickly. The words which were slow, they were moving gracefully. So that was also an art of taking words and translating them into movement. So we cannot just limit it to a conversation on inspiration here. We can even we can listen to a song, and we can think that, okay, this song is not just enough. I mean, it's not enough as an auditory, for auditory pleasure. This song needs to be read, and not just read by its lyrics. I mean, sometimes the lyrics can come off as really plain, as part of, as opposed to the entire experience you have, the whole musical experience you have, all the sounds and feelings. So you write a poem about that song. I have done that, and while the same way, I mean, I'm coming back to the same idea that that poem can never be that song, and that song can never be that poem. But there is this genetic, emotional genetic connection, emotional genetic connection that is binding them. So it is very, very easy to cut that emotional genetic connection and have those two things be two individual beings. But it is also really joyful to think about this connection that these two art forms, be it poetry and dance, a story and a song can have, I feel.
Okay, that was speaking about your personal experiences or what people feel on a personal level. Say, you're doing it out of passion. What Debmalya now wants to know is that how difficult is it to move seamlessly from one industry to another, like on a professional front, say, on the public eye. For example, from cinema to music. He says, even if one has the talent and hunch for another art form, it is incredibly difficult to make one's own space in another industry. That's what he says. Yeah.
True. And while I will come to the idea of moving from one industry to another on a broader sense of writing and then film, I will let me start with a narrower idea of the literary industry, but the market for novels and the market for poetry. On a narrower level, because it made me realize something that so when I was hunting for publishers for my first book, right, I eventually I published it through a very small indie publisher. I won't. Okay, this is a public forum. I can't believe I just used the word small. They're not small. Okay, I'm just saying that they are an independent publisher who were kind enough to take me on. So anyway, before that agreement with them actually happened, I faced rejection after rejection, and as Debmalya rightly said, that you may have the talent for it, but it's a whole different scenario when it comes to being successful from a commercial standpoint, right? So I even, I was so frustrated at one point that I asked one of those publishers who rejected me that why? Why are you rejecting a manuscript? You need books to sell. I wasn't, of course, I was much younger. So when the book came out when I was 21. So when I started trying, I was around, 20, 19 and a half, 20. So yeah, I did not have enough courage to say, okay, why I need to have an open discussion with you, not like that, but very kindly and fright and with fright, I asked them, so what is happening here? Can you give me some tips? Where am I going wrong that I'm getting rejections? And they said, it's not that we don't like your writing, but we don't have faith in poetry. So we don't know how much it will sell. So we have to think about our business, right? And it just shifted. I was thinking of them as these evil people who are just rejecting the newcomer. But in the end, they also have to think about their sales and so much. And so I had a conversation with someone in the Hollywood industry recently. I don't think I'm allowed to name her, so I won't, because it was a very private kind of session. But I had the opportunity to have a conversation with her, and I asked her that, you produce these films, she produces these films, and what we see in front of us, is it an approximation? And have there been a lot left out while the process was taking place, like a lot of skin shed? It's like a haircut, a lot of strands, not just strands, hair, lying on the floor, surgically removed to make this one perfect thing that hits the box offices. And she said, yes, definitely. You are talking while I was concerned about people rejecting my my ideas, my books, my manuscript. She and her team, not she, her team had rejected so many ideas from within their team. Like those team members were already onboarded to work on that film, but there were all these stories that they had to cut out. Like, okay, this scene will not do. And what they started out as and what the film ended up as, sometimes they were, they could not recognize the first draft from the final thing that hits the box office. It just happened. So what we the reason for me saying this is that we have this idea that what we have written is amazing, and it is, but I mean, like-minded people will read it, and they'll think that this is amazing and this needs to be on bookshelves, this needs to be sold, or this is an amazing film. But when you take it to the industry, it is not just about your inspiration. It's not about your words. It's not about your vision for your characters anymore. Other things come into play. I mean, what I'm saying is it's not your own journey anymore. So other people's opinions come into play. They'll think about what works. Is this sellable? Will this have enough viewership? And so on and so forth. So my experience with the second book was a little easier, and that is why I would always ask people to take that first step, because I released my first book, and it took more struggle than I was ready for, but it did happen, and that is why, and it was out there, and that is why when my second book came out, it was through a more traditional, bigger publisher in terms of the first book, and he said that, okay, you have this much biodata already on your hands, so that is one of the reasons why I am taking you on. So it wasn't just about the poetry. It is never just about the poetry. So I did not end up changing anything in the book. He did not make any demands, my publisher. Great for him. Thank God for that. But I think when you move from the written word, in the written word, you have more freedom, right? Because like I said, your audience, your readers, they have the luxury to spend more time with your creation. So, but when you take it to a film level, there are a lot of ideas that get cut down. First thing, again, I don't have experience pitching any films, but this is what I have heard from friends who have pitched films, that even if their idea gets accepted, and that is a huge deal, first of all, your idea getting accepted, your story getting accepted, then so many people will have so many different opinions about it. While with a book, it is just you and your publisher. In my experience so far, it's just you and me and my publisher, and the team of editors to a certain extent. But in a film, you have a team that is looking out for how much the story will relate to what kind of audience, and doing analysis, and that is all great. They all. I learned so much about these things when my friends come back and tell me, and there is so much work that goes on behind. So much statistical analysis and data that goes on behind it. So all of these teams will come. And it is I'm making a very unfair metaphor here, but they will just do surgery on your work to deliver your baby, right? It's your baby, and of course there will be a team of someone anesthetizing you, someone drawing your blood, someone assisting the doctors, and interns taking notes, and so many different teams, something you just cannot do alone. So I think that is something that comes into play when you are trying to approach an industry, like industry in film, be it films or be it TV series, web series. The surgery portion becomes very time consuming, and while the first challenge is, of course, to have someone accept your story for making it into a film, what you cannot ignore is that eventually what becomes your film or your TV show will be different from what you originally imagined it to be. So maybe I strayed a little from that topic of his, but from the question of his. But
No, that's exactly what he says next. Like he says, Shunil Gangopadhyay, as we all know, started as a poet for Kritivash, if he remembers correctly, which, as if I remember correctly, he did. And then he was sort of coerced into writing Atmaprakash by the editor of Desh, and then he says we all know how the rest of it went. So you never know what is coming next. You just sort of put your mind and soul into what you are doing, and then the rest of it will just sort of, I don't know, happen to you, if I might say. And we have another question that Andrei Tarkovsky was a filmmaker, a poet, and a photographer. Why do you think such polymaths are so few in number?
That is a great question. I've never thought about it, so I'm thinking as I speak. So maybe if anyone wants to correct me and say, okay, I don't agree, please do, because I'm just winging it right now, because I've never thought about why such polymaths are less in number. But the one thing that comes to my mind is the burden of being successful in different industries takes a lot of effort and time, which many people shy away from. So there must be lots of musicians we know. As I actually have a few friends who are coming to mind right now, who are these talented musicians, commercially successful, releasing albums and performing in concerts. But I also know them as amazing photographers or amazing writers, but it's just that they don't want to get into another industry in parallel. So maybe that can be one of the reasons, right? That if I talk about my own father, right, he has this passion for photography, and he's also a writer, passionate writer. But I wish he becomes a published writer soon, because you might think, okay, she's actually praising her dad sitting here, but it's an experience that I'm sharing, because I have been pushing. Travel is a very big part of my life, right? And I could travel from a very young age because my parents took me to those places. So my dad, being the commander of this travel ship, is there are these amazing photo albums which are there, with all these with all these technically perfect photographs, right? And he taught those things to himself, like the rule of thirds and the lights and shadows, the balance between them. He taught them to himself. He followed his instinct. Then he read books and YouTube tutorials. Not really an option back in the 90s, but okay, he did those things, and he's this fantastic photographer. And at the same time, because he kind of feels all of these sentiments in totality, the things he observes, he also carries them back as memories, and he writes them down as short pieces in Bengali travel prose. And I've been pushing him to release a book, or at least do something, contribute to magazines, chase the people from Desh, chase the people from Shanunda, and or papers, and publish them, because they're amazing. I am saying them even if he's my dad, but so he did. He started pursuing, started taking the art of writing seriously. But what about his photographs now? That is a whole other ball game. And again, I started pushing him that, okay, you need to do, this is pre-COVID time. So I was like, you need to do a gallery show. You need to put your photos up for exhibition. And I'm going to help you. I'm going to do this. But when he is a doctor, he writes purely out of love. He takes photographs purely out of love. And going to meetings to arrange photography exhibitions, taking long phone calls to go through the logistics, and going through the whole waiting for publishers to respond process, looking for publishers in the first place, finding contacts in media houses in the first place. It's an entire it's a whole new, it's a full-time job. People who do this know that it's a full-time job. So how will he do that? So there are people out there like my dad who have infinite talent in different fields, but it's just time and reality. His reality right now is spending so much time at the hospital, and doctors don't get weekends, so Monday to Sunday hospital, and doing his job, and that becomes his priority. And so many talent, so such many talents get lost this way. I have seen people who are passionate artists who say that, okay, I mean, I'm painting to feel good, but I'm saying that you are painting to make yourself feel good, and it made me feel good, but I want 1,000 more other people to also look at your stuff and feel good. But she doesn't just get the time to do those things. And you guys would know, right? You have your creative pursuits, and you have your exams, and how much can you do at the same time? So
Madhura, I'm sorry to cut you off. We have a technical glitch. Please give us a few minutes, okay?
Sure.
Live again in 10 seconds now. So, yeah. Again, I'm really, really sorry. So
no, why should you be?
So, hello everyone watching. We are really sorry. We had this small technical glitch. And again, now we go back to Madhuradi. And there were a few questions from last video. We were talking about how Debmalya thinks, or why Madhuradi thinks that there are few polymaths, like very few that we know. So I guess Madhuradi, you can take it up from now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said everything that I've in my stream of consciousness so far, but I'm still thinking about it. It's such a great thing to think about. But I would like to say that they are there, but it's just like why we don't see enough people making headlines is because it is one thing to be talented in multiple fields, but another thing to take all of them to a commercial level. So I think that is where most of the invisibility comes from. We will definitely find people in our friend circle, in our family, or people, acquaintances we make in office, college, that they are talented in so many different fields, but whether they are simultaneously present in bookshelves, in box offices, in art galleries, the sad truth is I wish they were, but there's a lot that is stopping them, because if it were in our hands to if we could translate it, map it, that talent means popularity, there would be more in number.
Okay, so now just like you said that there are people who are really, really talented. It's just that we as their audience, or we as the public, don't know it or are not aware of it. Now, again, drawing a few flavors, like you put, a few flavors from there. Shohamda again asks, do you recognize something to be your distinct poetic diction? And do you construct it consciously? Or do you consciously plan for reconstructing your diction from time to time?
Amazing question. Thanks for asking. So I won't say. So I mean, we all agree here that even though we may have our own style, we never limit it to that. We are constantly learning. We are constantly experimenting, and that is the joy of art. That it is never ending. The possibilities are never ending. But if we do find our corner, if I find my corner, my niche, then I try to make it my home. The same way that I love the entire world. I want to travel it. I want to see. I want to trek up the mountains. I want to explore the seas. I want to spend time in historical cities. But there are certain places which are my home. My hometown, be it my hometown or where I currently live in Bangalore, that is my home, or the house of a very close relative where I spend summers and winters, my home. So certain places are our niche, and the same way I would say that certain styles, I would say, I relate to the most. That I would say that okay, I write this way. The same. It being I always my personal niche being that I always try to write about, try to bring a wider sense of nature and the world in whatever I'm writing. Especially if I'm writing about human emotions, I try to mirror it with something in nature. That okay, the color red, I would say that it is. It reminds me of. I won't say it reminds me of. That's not how you use metaphors. It's just that the rose tinted flavor of my red glasses, or something. Everything I try to relate to nature. I think that will be. If anyone asks me what my style is, I would say it's that I use metaphor as my surest weapon, my go-to weapon, and it is always relating to unrelated things, people and places, emotions and nature. And when I say two unrelated things, it's just on the surface they're unrelated, but if you're successful in executing the metaphor, then you will see that yes,
Totally.
my broken heart does indeed feel like a sunset, and the endless friendship I have with my best friend is essentially an ocean, and things like that. So the idea behind it, I when I first started doing it, it felt really nice to me. But the idea of why I stuck with that is because the world has given that I find positivity in the world no matter what is going on in my life. So it just helps. I mean, I just need to go on one walk, and my faith in the world will be reinstored. Just looking at a simple flower, and I'll think that okay, there is this much beauty in something so tiny, and what I am facing may be larger than this, but there is still possibility out there. So this whole style of using metaphors and constantly linking stories, plot lines, and people's emotions to the hills and the seas and the sky is to make people understand the idea of possibility, and how I am constantly learning from the possibility of the world. So if you're asking me if I have my style, then that would be it. And if I'm constantly reconstructing it, rebuilding it, definitely I am learning all the time. I have changed my viewpoint of writing prose just 3 hours back when I read a book. So I was at the parlor, right, and I was bored, and I had this ebook. I started reading it. It's called Some. If you just want to know about it, it's called Some by David Eagleman, and these are these tiny short stories about what he thinks the afterlife would be. Fiction, of course, these tiny 3-page, 4-page short stories, and it just changed my life. So when I am working on a new book, short stories. So when the stories which are done right now, they are done. But the ones I'll be working on from tomorrow night, they will have a different flavor because David Eagleman's perspectives changed me. So, of course, I'm always open to having my ideas not deconstructed but expanded, right?
That is something that happens to us most of the times. Like, we do not end up writing poetry per se, but say something very tiny as a diary entry. That happens. Or say you are a movie buff and you watch a movie and for the next 2 days you are living as the main character, or you are living as the anti-hero, and you are just sort of in that zone. And I guess that continues, that is experienced by you people on a much higher level. I guess you can emulate it really, I don't know, on a very skin deep level, if I might say. Now,
I don't know why you said you people, because I hear you're an artist and
okay.
you illustrate poems.
Okay, who said that? I don't know.
You know who said
Debmalya,
that.
obviously. Now, he says that, like, from a point of view of a reader or as an audience, do you think that translation is poetry is a great no-no? Like Neruda said that reading poetry in translation is like taking a shower with a raincoat. And then regarding that, I think Kostabda also says that in any kind of artwork, we have seen that ideas are not given proper respect in India specifically, and copies of the main idea don't even receive a proper recognition after what the final output is. Do you have some sort of experience like that? Or what do you think the ethical stance should be against these things?
So, which one do you want me to answer first? The poetry with poetry in translation, or the first of the question?
Anything. I mean, that's for me, it's sort of kind of together. Like, when I'm taking a book and making a film out of it and then pretending that the film is totally my idea, that is a big no-no for me. And that has happened so many times, not only from book to movie, also from one language to other, or anything that happens. Plagiarism is a great deal right now. So yeah, you can sort of talk about that.
Yeah, so true. Plagiarism, right? My experience has been kind of like poetry to poetry. So there has been someone very recently who has been posting my poetry and passing it off as her own, but that is poetry. It's not like she made something. She made a photograph out of it and said that this entire inspiration came to me and no one else had a part to play in it. I have not experienced something like that, but the thought of it appalls me, definitely. I mean, when you trace, I have personally done this, and I've seen lots of people who have also done this, that we did speak previously about how a song might inspire a poem and all, but when you're writing that poem and putting it up on the public platform, or even if you're telling someone about it, you add a line there that inspired from this and this so and so song. Or if you're if you read a book, read a poem, and you just see that scene in your mind, and you go out and take a photograph that reflects that sentiment, then I have seen photographers who have said that this is in tribute to so and so character from so and so story, and that is exactly how it should be, because it is like a chain of inspiration, right? Even if like I read a book and it has this beautiful setting of an old house and so colors and people in these ethnic dresses, and something I see later on in life reminds me of that, and I take its picture or I paint its picture and I say that I thought of this. You did not think of this. You definitely did think of it, but there was someone who handed it to you, right? So definitely it is the artist's responsibility to respect the chain of inspiration and mention it. Definitely mention it. And yeah, that's what I feel. As for plagiarism, but of course that is how things should be done. The same way we see a lot of movies where we see similarities, and reason they get away with it is because they conveniently change certain things, which makes it a new work of art. And they say that, wow, it is in no way related to yours. There are similarities, but then where will you not find similarities? All similarities are coincidental. We put that disclaimer at the start of the movie. It happens, and we've seen it happen. Even if it's not, even if it's not a piece of art, right? Even if it's an experience you shared with someone, something a friend told you in confidence, and you go ahead and write about it and put it up, and it's a beautiful story. No wonder. But then you actually, uh, you know, betrayed someone. It's just, so if you do plagiarize an artist, it is the same as betraying someone, just someone you don't know, but at the same time you are betraying them. So morally, ethically, a very appalling thing, but it happens all the time. And I guess it is our responsibility to counter it. The same thing, recently it happened to one of my friends. They are comic artists, right? And this meme page, they took their comic, they removed their watermark, and they added a few more panels to that comic, and just passed it off as their own. There were people reacting. And how will the people know who the original artist is when the watermark has been removed, or if the artist is just a college student trying to make their mark with their Facebook page, Instagram page? And what if the original artist has less number of likes, less popularity than the page which plagiarized them from? So it's happening so much that it makes me afraid, and afraid of putting my stuff up on social media. But then I then again, it's kind of naive to say that, oh, okay, people won't do that, I am going to take measures. But people will do that. But it's a risk I take. It's a risk everybody takes. And yeah, some art forms are easier to plagiarize than others. So we have this very I don't know if other people did this consciously or not, but we started posting our poems as pictures, as screenshots of our as screenshots of the letters, so that people cannot just copy paste from our status and put it up on their status. They would have to make a bit more effort, but that is just extending their effort but not deleting it. So it's there, and it's bad.
That is something like I have experienced and I have seen, and to be really, really honest, done a bit unknowingly though. Initially, when I was starting out, like no one ever told me that you have to say inspiration Pinterest or inspiration this, and no one said that. And then I sort of drew inspiration from this figurine, or from the stone of colors that I felt was really warm in a picture, and then painted a picture of my own. And I am guilty of it, and I believe in some intricate level everyone is guilty of it. So like the only part is that how effectively you sort of cage the fact that you are plagiarizing. That's how the people who do that put it out there. Because I've seen people who have, say, 30K followers, and they are like amazing artists, and their work has been taken in by this app, say Sketch app or a Color app, and then that app just does not only does not pay tribute or reference, they refuse to accept that it's the actual, like the smaller artist's work. And then that becomes very difficult for the emerging artists to push a claim on, like, how do I prove this is my own work? So now I'm like, with this social media exposure, now I'm there, and I put few not only references but also respect for the people in the first place. The next thing is, you were talking about, like, since we are talking about my art right now, so you said how Debmalya talked about me illustrating one of his poems, and that is coming out on Puja Barshiki, as you know. So please, I don't know. I'll text you maybe tonight, or you can get back to Demalo or Diptoda, and please talk about how you feel the connection between the art forms are there in our magazine. Like, this is our first attempt, and we are trying to have an illustrated version. So yeah, there will be a major uh, showcasing of how one art form translates into the other in that. So yeah, and
That is amazing. I mean, I didn't know that that was your theme, and it makes me doubly happy that I got to talk about it while all of you were so instrumentally implementing it at the same time.
yeah, so like, it's kind of a welcome break after this blast of assignments that we are receiving, to put it mildly. So yeah, I think now there's one last question that we are gonna take up. Is it really necessary for an artist to keep any social aspect in mind while creating something? I mean, if he or she creates something which is groundbreaking in terms of its form or artistic or aesthetic point of view, but content wise or social relativity wise goes against the current social values or supports something evil according to current social norms, should or should we not be flexible enough to appreciate the work as it is?
That is such an amazing question.
It's
You know,
by show Hamda, so you can,
yeah.
you know who it's coming from.
Okay, great. So I think, from my personal opinion, is that any kind of art can be used for. I keep using the word weapon as though I'm talking about warfare, but as an instrument for society, right? Art is used as an instrument for society, for the betterment of society. So while we're keeping that in mind, if something we write, something we create will have a negative effect, then talking about how much we can publicize it, circulate it, is something that is a decision that we need to make, honestly speaking. But that being said, as a piece of art, we can experiment with it just as a piece of art, right? And to see what it means. I'm taking my thoughts to a dangerous level right now, but basically, unless you're actually going out there and hurting somebody's sentiments, and actually hurting someone's sentiments, if you want to privately show people, show your friends that, okay, I made this, I think it can be seen. We can separate the idea from the form. We can do that, but if you already have the form, so I am speaking from a very, 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 very moral standpoint here. I'm this super overthinker. So you might think that, okay, she's being overly moral, but in my experience, I'll say that if you already have the form, then if you're if you see form as pen sketches and subject and theme as color, then maybe experiment with a different color, I would say, which is more positive, because it can be interpreted by other people as something negative, and that sets your art into a different picture, right? I'm only saying this because I am overly careful about how sometimes I even end up thinking that this might hurt someone, even though that thought is extremely ridiculous. And if I share it with someone close and I say that, okay, am I hurting someone with this idea? They're like, what? But that is how big of an overthinker I am. So that is why the answer you'll get from me is that since art is an instrument for which can be used for so many purposes, I think we should be responsible in how we use it. the same way, we have these ideas about technologies and algorithms, which if released to the public, they can go to certain to very frightening levels, and that's why they are kept as secret by the government, by the military, whichever organization is commanding it, because if it falls into the hand of the people, it will go haywire. So again, what is haywire? Do you want the society to go haywire because you don't agree with certain norms? Then that is something to be considered. The way Shotyajit Rai's lyrics go about dethroning the king, but in that case, the king needs to be dethroned. So if it's a scenario like that, if you're going against the norm for a greater good, then of course your art is a positive reinforcement there. But if it's controversial to us to the extent that it just ends up hurting people, then I don't know. I don't know how much we can separate the form from the theme. Yeah, it got a little awkward there. So.
No, that was like so nicely explained. And what I feel the highlight of the evening for me tonight is the fact that you are so relatable. Like everything you say, I end up realizing that is my thought process. It's just that I'm hearing it nicely worded and from my laptop screen. That's all. Yeah, so
it's very flattering to hear.
No, the thing is that we are sort of living in the same generation, and the exposure that we have, it's sort of the same. So I don't know, our thought processes and the way we think about, the way we process about day-to-day things are sort of really same. And it's just that my thoughts go sort of haywire, and you, being the poet, the artist that you are, you sort of can command it and sort of put it nicely into words.
Oh God, I cannot command my thoughts. They are always haywire. It's just, I think with time I learned how to express them.
Yeah.
That's it. Otherwise, here it's all...
There's this popular Instagram caption, professional overthinker. So I think that
that's me.
Artists is
that's all of us.
Sort of a plus point and a minus point. It's like two sides of the same coin. So
it's your blessing and your curse. It's it's something I heard in a TV show.
Okay, so Madhuradi, I think we are gonna wrap up right now, and it was again an amazing evening to have you talk with something that we are as a team currently focusing on. And obviously it's just amazing to have you with us again, although again in front of a laptop screen, but then have you with us. So yeah, we hope this pandemic ends quick and we can have you in person over for a slam or a workshop or anything, and just have you with us at IZK. So yeah, to all those who are watching with us, thank you for being with us tonight, and please have a good night, and keep watching Campus Radio for next episodes of Popularly Yours. Okay.
Thank you so much. Good night.